Remember when it was the funniest thing ever to get a random concept, stick the word simulator on the end, and then sell it on Steam Early Access? Nah, me neither, but an awful lot of people apparently begged to differ not too long ago. So, it's great to see an early access simulator on Steam that's actually really cool. PC Building Simulator is a game that I think was sort of inevitable, judging by how popular PC gaming and building seems to have gotten in the last few years, which is why I'm all the more glad that it's been really well made so far. Like a lot of simulator games, it can be quite hard to explain the appeal since, unlike most games, they don't have a fun central mechanic. In fact, you could probably argue a lot of simulators are tedious and boring at their core, but it's the context and the player's interest in the subject that makes it more than that. And PC Building Simulator is much the same. In fact, the career mode of the game is the reason I love it, and it's what I'm going to focus on later in the video, but for now I just need to explain the game's mechanics. The actual PC building is essentially just clicking on parts to place or remove them, and clicking on ports to attach a cable between them. As such, it skips the fiddlier parts of building a PC, like trying to cram in the CPU power connector into the board after it's already in the case, or trying to close the side panel over a massive cable stuffed down the back, or getting your finger sliced open on the I/O backplate. Which is fine. These are struggles that no video game could do justice to anyway, so it's a shame when people declare it not realistic for simplifying the actions a little. I just don't see a feasible way it could pull off the full experience without VR and motion controls, and I'm also not convinced the extra fiddliness would really add anything anyway. Speaking of adding things, this game sees updates on a pretty regular basis, and every time you can expect a new lineup of parts, bug fixes, and maybe even a feature or two. So what's the selection of parts like as it stands? Currently, the game covers Intel Skylake, Kaby Lake, and Coffee Lake processors, as well as AMD Ryzen and Threadripper. There's a few boards for each platform, although sadly there's no real budget-oriented boards and only full ATX form factor, so no mini PCs just yet. For cases, there's a pretty decent range from some well-known brands, which is nice to see, especially as it's probably one of the more varied and complex parts to model. On the other hand, power supplies and RAM are extremely populated, probably for the opposite reason. It would be nice if there was some little drop-down menus where you could choose the clock speed, wattage or colour of the LEDs in the store rather than sifting through endless variations with the same memory stick. Meanwhile, storage isn't very exciting, and the graphics card market is absolutely dominated by MSI's gaming series, but the game covers a fairly broad spectrum of cards from recent generations of both AMD and Nvidia. There's also a few generic ones here and there that don't really make sense, like a tiny R9 290 that doesn't need any power connectors. I guess it's understandable that companies aren't interested in licensing out old products, but I still think there should be a few different models for generic cards further down the line. They also recently added a wide variety of colour cables, which I keep forgetting about, but hey, the option's there. Anyway, so if it's a game about PC building that contains a lot of PC parts and some building mechanics, then we're done here, right? Well no, because cool as it is, it's the sort of thing that'd get pretty old fast as soon as you've made your own PC and then the most overkill PC possible just to feel bad. Which is why I'm really glad that this game has the career mode I mentioned earlier. On your in-game computer, you get emails from a variety of interesting characters asking you for PC upgrades, builds or repairs, and it's down to you to decide what they need and order the right parts for the job. Customers' PCs take a day to arrive and the parts can either be instant, next day or 3-day depending on how much you spend on shipping. Which adds an interesting bit of strategy when jobs have deadlines and picking the wrong part first time can cost you dearly if you end up needing same day shipping to get everything ready in time. I'm not going to pretend it's a particularly challenging game, but at the very least, it manages to be a fun time sink that adds context and replayability to the central PC building mechanics. Not gonna lie, I've played quite a lot of this mode, and for that reason I'd like to spend a little while talking about it and what I'd improve. The variety of jobs is okay, but I'm glad to hear they're adding more. I really love how some of the characters whose PCs you encounter have their own little story arc with some unexpected or not so unexpected twists here and there. Of course, you can ignore everything and just do the job, but it's nice that the flavour text is there. Early on in the game, you tend to get straightforward jobs like upgrading one component or even just running a virus scan, but as things progress, you get more requests like upgrading a PC to run a certain game or, more annoyingly, to bench above a certain 3D Mark score. It's cool that they have a little video of 3D Mark Time Spy that plays at a frame rate depending on how good the computer is, but these jobs can become a bit of a slog since each benchmark run takes a minute and a half, and there is nothing worse than standing around for bench after bench, only for it to spit out a score slightly below what you need. Having said that, they did recently add overclocking to the game, which can be a lifesaver for closing up the gap of those few extra points. It seems fairly in-depth too, with core speed, memory speed, and core voltage tweaking for both the CPU and the graphics card, but I admit I haven't messed around with it enough to get a feel for how accurate or nuanced the simulation is. It'd be fascinating to see what factors it takes into account and how they decide the maximum frequency a given processor can do. Is every chip slightly different, like the silicon lottery we have in real life? I don't know, if anyone has any insight, that'd be awesome. On the other side of the spectrum, you also get jobs where you have to work out what's wrong with a broken PC and fix accordingly, which become ridiculously easy because the PC will straight up tell you if its processor, memory or storage isn't working, which seems like a big missed opportunity from what could have been a interesting puzzle of trying various parts with known good ones to find out which don't work correctly, but as it stands, all you have to do is turn on the computer and see what it says. At least faulty graphics cards won't show any display, and broken motherboards or power supplies will prevent the PC from turning on at all, but even if you're in doubt, you can still just take all the parts out and the game will tell you which are dead. So yeah, without making it too frustrating, I'd love to see a bit more mystery in the diagnosis jobs. The other main point I have with career mode is the pricing and positioning of the parts. Unlocking new parts is currently tied to the leveling up system, which is a good compromise since it'd take way too long if it happened according to the calendar instead, but the prices of a given part are always static except if they appear on the PC bay. Here they might have a small discount in price, along with free, but much slower shipping, which is an interesting idea, but it's only really useful for stocking up on parts as the turnaround is way too long to consider waiting on it for a single job. There's a program which tells you how all the parts perform in relation to one another, and it'll be your go-to when you need to upgrade someone's computer and make a judgment about how many more 3D Mark points they'll get. To simplify things, each product has a single score to represent its overall performance, which again I think is a perfectly fine concession to make, but it does lead to some oddities. Since processors are judged entirely on their multi-core performance, Ryzen absolutely dominated everything. There was not a single use case where Intel made sense except from like the ultra low end where no Ryzens exist. While this is incredibly dank, it also makes every other CPU pointless, and the developers clearly realize this as they patch the game and drastically increase the prices of AMD processors to compensate. I'm not sure I agree with this solution, and I think the developers will have a hard decision to make about whether realism or balance is more important to them. So really, I think the best of both worlds could be achieved if new part unlocks acted a bit more like they did in real life, where the price is high at first, but slowly declines and then drops once a new generation comes out and replaces it. Maybe the PC bay could be flooded with people selling off their old hardware to upgrade as well, giving you some great deals while the market sells. Obviously, this relies on the devs continuing to add new generations and probably some older ones as well eventually, but I think it'll be a really neat way of giving everything a place in the game without having to drastically inflate prices of newer parts just to keep the balance. Oh, and the final thing I'd like to mention while I'm on topic is that you can sell stuff from your inventory, but the value is absolutely awful and it never makes any sense to do it at all. Why not add a feature to the PC bay where you can make a listing for a part and it gets bids over the course of a few days or something? I don't know, that'd be neat I think. Okay, so I've talked a lot about the mechanics and what I'd like to see in the future, but I guess what you really want to know is the game worth it? If you're into hardware, which I assume you probably are if you're watching this, then yeah, absolutely, get it. Especially today since the Steam sale is about to end. The only reason I've made this video and gone into all this depth about stuff is because I think the game is really cool and it also has a lot of further potential, so I hope it fulfills that eventually, but I believe it is in good hands and I wish the devs good luck. But until next time, I will catch you later.